Present.
And Miss Tarver, I don't think she is with us. And Miss White.
Present.
All right, and that is 7 of 8 members, so you do have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Brenton. So again, welcome everyone to the Act 378 Subcommittee for the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. We will start off our meeting. I think just did a welcome, and our introductions was roll call. And so just a review of the protocols. Do we have someone with that, or can you put that on the screen?
You want me to run through it?
If you would, yeah.
Okay. So council or committee members will participate via Zoom and shall be considered present when they display their faces and their camera. You should have your first and last name as well. Have microphones muted unless called upon by the chairperson. Electronically raise your hand if you're requesting to speak, and you'll be recognized by the chair. Once recognized, then your microphone will be turned on. And after speaking, your microphone will be muted. Guests may participate and observe our meetings. Will be live via YouTube. All public meetings are recorded, and they will be available on the channel. Public comment can be submitted during the meeting via electronically by raising your hand and requesting to make a comment. You can also comment via the chat box, and any public comments of a person's character will not be heard. And that about sums it up.
Thanks, Brenton. So the next item on our agenda is the approval for our October meeting summary. It's on our screen now. We just need a motion and a second in order to approve it. Or if there's any changes, you can speak up.
As long as nobody objects, you can just approve it by unanimous consent.
Okay, thanks, Brenton. So if you have any changes that need to be made, go ahead and speak up. Okay, hearing none. Are there any objections to approving the minutes? Okay, so we have unanimous consent. The minutes are approved. Okay. The next item on our agenda is from Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, and Tanya Murphy will share with us now.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I've got 3 reports to look at today. The first one is the report y'all have seen before. It includes the information for the second quarter of fiscal year 22. Just as a note, as a reminder, this report is with the expenditures are submitted prior to the LGEs receiving all of the invoices that they will have now received by the end of December. So even though it has a percentage for this quarter, it's not a complete accounting of all of the expenditures for the quarter. As you can see, generally we're looking for a 50% because it's the second quarter of the fiscal year, but minus some of the invoices. Some of them are below the 50, but it's also expected. All of the LGEs are in a similar range as far as the percentage they've spent up to now. It doesn't appear to be any of the LGEs in any kind of trouble. It looks like we all anticipate that they will spend all of their money. So for individual and family support, we've got a total statewide 39% spent so far. A total cumulative served so far, 2,429 individuals. Do I have any questions for the individual and family support section of the report?
Kenya, I have a question. Just looking at the percentage spent for each of our LGEs, I kind of expected our areas that were in the in Hurricane Ida impacted regions would have a higher amount spent because of the needs, but can you give any information on that or perspective of that?
The general responses that I've received when I've asked about that is the people evacuated out of their region. So then that region wouldn't be spending the money, as well as if any of the vocational services, were unable to continue to provide services, then some of those contracts weren't spent. I guess IFS money isn't necessarily used to rebuild houses or to do the things that would be repaired or damaged from Hurricane Ida. So perhaps that's just not reflective in these expenditures.
Yeah, and I guess, that raises another question. If someone is in an impacted area and they have to evacuate somewhere else, they would not call their local LGE for assistance? Because I know I get calls from people who have people with developmental disabilities that are impacted by the hurricane and need some assistance. Maybe the FEMA process isn't working, they need hotels, that type of thing, for a couple of days just to help them out. And they'll, many times the LGEs, they always will help out. They'll, research and help out. So I'm just wondering, I always thought that you go back to the LGE where your services are typically where you live.
Right. Well, I guess I can't answer your question, Bambi, because I don't know the answer. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions?
So I guess we'll move on to the Flexible Family Fund section. Flexible Family Fund is right at 50% where we would anticipate that they would be. It's $258 every month. So it's a standard payment. The payments are automatically sent. So it's a lot easier to keep that. They already know that they've spent that 50% at this stage. And cumulative served across the state, 1,810. Do I have any questions for the Flexible Family Fund section?
It looks like
Melinda has her hand raised. Thank you,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, you broke up. Okay, Melinda, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Will we be able to get an answer to the question at the first meeting about the IFS funds? Because it was my understanding you went back to the region that you came from when you needed help, when you evacuated, but maybe I'm wrong. But can we get an answer?
This is Julie. This is Julie. This is Julie. I can try to follow up on that one.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that when people evacuated out of Imperial Calcasieu, that Imperial Calcasieu did provide hotels and stuff like that. But as far as explaining why those areas that were impacted don't have a higher percentage of expenditures in this particular quarter, that's something that, like Julie said, we'll have to follow up on and find out why.
But just to be clear, because Tanya, I think what Melinda was asking is I probably made it more complicated with adding all these other things, but where do people go? Where are they supposed to contact their LGE from where they live? Or are they supposed to contact the LGE from where they, and I guess support coordination, like that's probably who you should go through is your support coordinator who then does that. So then who do they contact? Like there has to be a process.
Right. And I know that
Right.
EOC is heavily involved in that when they have somebody in a shelter that has some particular need and they, contact EOC and then they look them up in the participant services database, find out if they already have a statement of approval, which LGE they're with. And then I think we do contact them with the LGE where they're from. And in addition, I think that they also say, if they're going to be in a hotel there and they need somebody to cut a check, sometimes the place where they've, evacuated to will just cut the check and pay for the hotel. So I know that we do whatever we can to help. I don't know
Right.
if there's like a set, you have to get it from where you
Right.
came from, or if we all just jump in and try to help.
Yeah, I think that's probably what happens. That's what I've seen happen. But is there like a process, like the first place is where you're from, and then whoever else can help if the needs are being met helps out. So thank you. I appreciate
Right.
it.
And if you're from a place that's affected, you might not even be able to contact the place,
Right.
the LGE where you evacuated from. And so in that case, of course, I've sent out emails and say, hey, we can't locate the DD director from this place and that place because they've evacuated to Dallas or whatever. So the
Mhm.
places that aren't affected just jump in and help. So it depends on each disaster as to what we do and how we react.
Thank you very much.
And Troy mentions in the chat that, if people evacuate to Lafayette, they provide the assistance regardless of where they're from.
Thanks. Do we have any other questions about flexible family funds? Okay.
So we can move on to the Act 73 compliance report. All of the LGEs have budgeted 9% of their state general funds as they've been asked to do by the Act 73 request. And let's see, they're right at the whole state combined, they're right at 49% of spending that 9%. So, which is exactly where we would expect them to be. We don't anticipate any problems with any of the LGE spending the 9%. Any questions about the Act 73 report for Q2?
I don't see any.
For the next two, Tanya, do you have a preference if you want to do the impacts of 73
Well,
or do you want to do the IFS?
I would think that we probably should do the approved pending funding since that's something
Okay.
that I typically provide every quarter, whereas the Act 73 is just a one-time report. So approved pending funding, let's see, what do we have here? Looks like we've got 1, 2, 3 cases from capital area and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cases from Imperial Calcasieu that are approved pending funding as of December 31st, 2021.
Hey, it's Brenton. Just to chime in, I know it looks a little bit different than usually how you send it to me, Tanya, but just for folks on the committee or in the public that maybe aren't used to this report, basically just the data that's here at the top that talks about requested services and outcomes and dates. That's the information that Tanya sends over to me, and then I put it in this format so we can kind of narrow down to the specific requests, which is down here on the bottom. Which let you know how much funding would be needed if they were to honor all of these requests. And then just the number as far as priorities goes. So you'll see here, priority 1, there were 0, and 2s, there were 9 requests, priority 3s, there was 1 request, and so on and so forth. And then at the bottom, you can see the specific requests that were made based on each issue, whether it was incontinence supplies, household living expenses, PCA services or personal care services, assistive devices, those types of things. So I just wanted to set it up for what you're looking at in the report if folks had questions about anything in particular.
I would just say it's concerning that, you know, there's 7, 9 priority 2 requests that can't be funded. It just seems, I know we've had this discussion before, it just seems like there's some discrepancies, like all the other entities are funding everything that's approved, but these 2 entities have level 2s that they can't fund.
Yeah, we can reach out to Capital Area and Imperial Calcasieu and find out what their thought process is for approved pending funding. You know, because we can see that they've got some money in their budget. They've probably obligated quite a bit of it, and just to find out what they're thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Just giving everybody an opportunity to kind of look it over. Any other questions about this report? Okay, so I'll move on to the Act 73 impacts. You know, it's a challenge to try to indicate or show how something has impacted the expenditures. This is my first shot at trying to show an impact. We went back to 2015 and got the final expenditures for the fiscal year for 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 21. So that we could get it on a graph and see if we could show impacts. For everyone's information, the Act 73 became effective June 7th of 2017. So you would see if there were an impact, it would occur in 2018, the fiscal year 2018, which would start July 2017, if that makes sense. So when you're looking at these graphs, 2018 is when it will have first had an impact, if it did. So, you know, if you look at Metropolitan Human Services District, which is the first one listed here, it's total numbers served. And then the next one shows how much was budgeted and how much was expended if you scroll down to the lines. Blue is budgeted and orange expended. So if you look at if you, yeah, I would always try to like make a line at 2018 and see if that shows. I think that there's more of a impact you can see when COVID-19 hit in 2020, where it drops for a bit there in the expenditures. But you can see an increase in 18. And if you want to just scroll down to capital area, you can see an increase at 18. And if you scroll down further to the charted lines, you can see a marked increase in 2018. I'm just scrolling with you, Brenton. It's, you know, you look at all 10 of them. Now with Imperial Calcasieu, this is not the same thing that we've seen in the other LGEs. So of course, this is something we would want to look at a little closer. We would have to find out what was their state general funds that they were given in 15, 16, 17, and 18 to find out if they actually budgeted less to come in to be at the 9%, or if there were some other impacts that made the spending change. You know, it would be difficult at this point to say that this is all about Act 73, but you know, we didn't get the state general funds that each LGE was given to compare with the 9% versus. That's something that we could go back and do. The other LGEs, it's like, it's clear that in 2018 it went up, but for Imperial Calcasieu, it looks like it went down as far as number of people served.
But they're spending about the same amount of money.
Exactly. So total served, spent, yeah.
For Central Louisiana, it seems like in 2020, like that might have been like they got more budgeted, more funds, not budgeted. They received more funds, because why would they have a big increase in 2020?
Central Louisiana Human Services District wasn't one of the ones that got the extra money. That was Northwest Louisiana and Florida parishes that got that influx of money. So it's an anomaly. I don't understand it. And, you know, I would have to know what their state general funds were and why all of a sudden it shot up, where everybody else went down for COVID and Central Louisiana Human Services District shot up. So I'm not exactly sure why, but, you know, we're looking at the 2018 Act 73 impact. So Central Louisiana Human Services District looked like they were steady along, spending that amount all along. So it didn't really change what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Northeast Delta, you could probably see an increase there.
Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
I'm sorry.
Nicole?
Okay, so upon the report, and we're talking about the total served, the numbers that's up on the side, the 50, 100, 150, 200, is that in regards to, that's only 250 people, or like, is that it? Is that the only total number amount of people that were being serviced? Because some ports are saying like 1,000 and something people, and then these are saying like 160 or 175. Like you can see it up on here. So are we talking about? Because I'm kind of confused with the numbers, with the total serve. On the total serve on the other report, it has like 1,700 and so people, but this only has like 165, 170. Is that what we're going off of, or am I reading this the wrong way?
Brenton, can you pull up the total served, the fiscal year 22 quarter 2 expenditure report with the numbers for each cumulative served? So for Metropolitan Human Services District, halfway through the year, they're at 335. So I'll go all the way back up to Metropolitan Human Services District. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It seems like if they're in 2021, their total serve was 140. So I'm wondering if that's not a combination of cumulative served.
Yeah, because I was just trying to do the comparison to look at the reports right beside each other. And I was just like, okay, what numbers are the,
Yeah,
because it's not adding up into what the report has. So, you know,
I wonder if that's just flexible family fund. I'll have to go back and check those numbers.
okay,
Thanks for bringing that to my attention, though.
no problem.
So, I just kind of wanted to provide this to you guys to take a look at as like my first attempt at trying to show an impact. There's just a lot of factors involved. And I guess we probably were at Florida parishes scrolling through. If you want to, just finish the scroll through to Jefferson Parish. I think that in general, you can see a change occurring in 2018 where expenditures budgeted and number of people served went up in general. So it would seem to have had an impact in most of the LGEs. I just found it interesting as well that we were pulling this to see Act 73 impacts, but you could definitely see COVID in there too. When we, extended the line out through 2021, you could see some of the impacts of COVID as well. But, it's a lot of information to absorb. Nicole, I really appreciate you bringing that snippet to my attention, and I'll take a look at it again and see if we've got those numbers right on the side. But otherwise, that's my first shot at it. I think you guys can take a look at it, maybe provide a more specific ask, as opposed to just the broad, what would be the impacts? Maybe if you would, think about something more specific that you want from us data-wise as in relation to Act 73, and we might be able to put that together for you. This was just kind of like a guess on my part on something that might show.
I'm just wondering as I look, you can see, looking at one of the LGEs and looking at the graphs, the charts and the graphs, and you can see the curves if they're going up or down on the bar graph or the line graph. But when you're looking at and you're going from one LGE to the next, I think the fact that the numbers are not the same may cause some like not to see some type of discrepancy. So, for instance, some of them, the bar graph goes up to from 130 to 170, 155 to 195. I think towards the top, you have some that go even higher, capital area 0 to 350. So another bar graph, if someone is looking at it and comparing the bar graphs from each entity, it could make it look distorted, if that makes sense.
Right, because the numbers on the side are different.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the number served by Imperial Calcasieu is not going to be the same number served by Metropolitan. So they had to make it different, but I hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. So they created this, the HLGE created these?
No, we did. I did.
I guess it just depends on what you're looking at and making sure whoever's looking at it is clear, because the size of the bars kind of make it look like they might be serving the same number of people and they're really serving. It's a different comparison.
Right. And so like each LGE's chart is only for itself.
Right.
Yeah. While I've got everybody here, I know we're still looking at these charts, but in the past, you guys asked me about individual and family support expenditures, and why they were different in different LGEs, and why one LGE would have not spent any money on adult diapers, whereas the other LGE spends a lot. And I did let you guys know that we were going to get together and have a meeting with all the LGEs, and I did that. I brought all of the DD directors and the individual and family support supervisors to a Zoom meeting. And, we looked at every report and all of the expenditures, and we talked about each thing. And there were some very specific takeaways that I got that I just wanted to share with the DD Council, because that was one of the questions you guys brought up several meetings ago. The DD directors wanted to make sure and let you guys know that every request that the LGEs receive is a person-centered and decided accordingly. So you're going to have every request they're going to take into account the person's disability, the family situation, their income, the resources available in that particular community. And so it's very difficult to compare LGE to LGE. And person to person, and why is this spent here and not spent here? Because every single request is person-centered, and they decide upon funding it according to the circumstances unique to each one. One of the reasons the LGEs, the Human Service Districts and Authorities, were created was because there were different resources available in each region. And so they wanted the local governing entities to utilize what they had available to them. And so each LGE has unique needs and unique requests. And so, again, it's difficult to contrast and compare. Each LGE has specific needs that in their communities that might not be reflected in the same needs in other communities. And so these are just some of the reasons why you might see some differences. There are some service options available, and amount of funding available to each LGE that affects the items that are purchased. We have one LGE that has a pretty active advocacy group that gets diapers donated. And so that explains why that one LGE does not spend as much money on diapers, adult disposable undergarments.
Tanya, I think that's what we wanted to know, was like specifically, where those regions. So you didn't. I appreciate that it's person-centered and glad that was brought up. But whenever you have one. You can't have an LGE that doesn't have anybody in their region that's asking for diapers, but we wanted to know the reason why is because they have this other source. So like that was the information that we wanted to know. We figured that it
Yep,
had
and
some other need.
That's my next 2 points, but, and I
Okay.
appreciate that. That was mainly what you wanted to know. So, but yeah, that was a surprise to me. And, yeah, they said that they have like, a very, very, active advocacy group in their LGE that gets diapers donated. And so whenever they get a request for diapers, they send them over that way. And so that was something that all of the LGEs, when they were on the phone, they were like, oh. So I said, well, y'all need to get with your Families Helping Families or whatever advocacy group you have, and see, is that something that you can do in your region, is get stuff donated and save yourself some IFS money. But I thought that was pretty interesting too. And then another thing that came out of that meeting was that, and Brenton, I imagine you'll probably peak with this information, but we did have a couple of LGEs that were putting some purchases in the other category in the database that shouldn't really been put in other. It should have been put in something that is designated specifically. And so their region is going to have a higher other than an individual item. And so that's going to be fixed. And in addition, I'm going to get with our data programmer and add 2 categories that a lot of information was being put into other for SIL and community integration services. Those, if they were spending money on SIL or community integration, that was going into the other category. So, so that was part of it too, is that some of the information was being placed into other instead of correctly, put in what was actually spent on. But I think the diapers was the main takeaway to me, because I think that was the hugest discrepancy that we saw that made everybody really pique their interest. Why in the world would one LGE spend almost no money on adult undergarments and everybody else is spending thousands of dollars? But that's why. But that concludes all the information I have to give and take up the whole meeting practically. But does anybody have any questions?
So I appreciate that. Will we be able to get that information from the LGAs? And as you move forward, I think you give that report annually, correct?
What report are we talking about?
The report that has the breakdown that caused you to, the question.
Oh, yeah.
you asked to go back to the LGEs, the breakdown of their expense categories, I guess is what it is.
Yeah, at the end of every fiscal year, at like the October meeting, I think. Yep.
So will that report have more details now that you've had this conversation with them? There'll be some changes, the ones that like identified some different ways that they need to categorize it, that might have caused some us to kind of look at those categories. But also, will there be some reflection in the report to identify those things, like the region that has some sources that is doing a really great job of getting donations for diapers or getting dental services for their people through another entity, those type of things? I guess going forward, so we don't have the same conversation, like, why is this happening? Why do they have this large amount and this expenditure, and this other region doesn't have any? So will we have more information on your report to help clarify those questions?
I mean, I can take a look at the report and see if I see a discrepancy, see if something jumps out at me, and go back to the LGE and say, hey, you didn't spend very much money on this particular item. Do you have a reason? So that I can, explain it. But I will, yeah, each year, if there's something that jumps out to you guys. I mean, I wouldn't know what to put in there if I don't know what you want to know. Because to me, it's like each LGE is funding the service, the requests that are coming to them. But yeah, for sure, each year, if we see something that just jumps out and it says one LGE is spending a lot of money on this and nobody else is, I'll certainly try to get more details for you on those discrepancies.
Okay, I guess I just feel like I'm glad that the response and that they're collaborating and looking at ways to, some of them are doing a good job of getting resources, but I don't feel like our questions were answered like specifically. And maybe we didn't ask the question specifically. Maybe it was our ask. So we still don't know why anything is happening in any region. Is really broad response. We don't know specifics in each region. So I don't know if I'm misunderstanding or maybe we need to ask more specific questions.
I mean, I thought that, getting all the LGEs together and sharing the information and coming back with the one that I could definitely point to was the diapers. But all of the rest of it was really more about LGEs are like, look, we're spending the money on what we're being asked to spend money on. We're providing the services to the people. And so what they ask us for is what we spend the money on. It's going to be different in every LGE. So it's not like one LGE says we aren't going to spend any money on this particular thing. It's just like maybe they're just not being asked for it. But if you guys are going to have to give me something very specific from a very specific LGE, why isn't this LGE spending money on this particular thing? In order for me to answer, because I feel like I did answer it. So you just have to tell me what it is that you feel like you still don't know, and I'll try to get that for you.
And I feel like what the issue with that is and first off, the DD directors and all the LGEs are just phenomenal people, and I love working with them, and they always really responsive. So this certainly isn't anything against what they're doing in our DD system in the LGEs, but just in regards to your response there, is oftentimes what happens is that it's what they're being asked and they're doing that. But I have a fear, because I've seen this happen before, is that people get into routines. So perhaps the support coordinator is telling people this is what you can ask for, and they get in that routine in certain regions, and that's what they're asking for. So that's why we see that this is what people are asking for in this region, and they're not doing it in another region. And so I think that was kind of the background of like our concern with the questions is, are people getting guidance from somewhere? And I don't mean to say that support coordinators aren't giving them good information, but somewhere along the way, people in that region are really getting information to direct them to say, this is what their need is, and this is the way that they get it, or this is what they should ask for. And maybe that's the issue, while we see some pitches in some certain categories.
Yeah, if you could just give me the specific thing other than the diapers, because nothing real else really jumped out at me. Then we'll see what we can do about, because I do see what you're saying, and that is true. We have, I've seen that before. Support coordinators will be like, well, I'm not even going to ask for that, because every time I ask for that, they say no. Or, that it doesn't occur to them like this family, all you can eat is PCA, or whatever. So I really do hear what you're saying. So, but you're gonna have to give me something specific at a specific LGE so that I know what to ask and who to ask.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. And thanks again to all the DD directors and everybody who participated in that meeting with you, and always willing to work and help out. So we really appreciate that. And let's see, I have to pull up my screen to see what's next on our agenda. Do we have anything else with you, Tanya, that you need to share?
I certainly hope not.
Okay, any other questions for Tanya, her OCDD? Okay.
It looks like Melinda has her hand raised. Melinda Elliott.
Melinda?
Thank you, Bambi. Can we see the report where it talked about the requests from the different LGEs that weren't funded or were only or were waiting for funding? So I was one of the people that had asked questions about this, and I'm just like truly excited that MCAL answered with some of these answers, because I knew some things that weren't being funded, that weren't being shown on some of the reports that we were seeing before this. And our LGE is wonderful. The LGE director and the DD director, or assistant director, that's not the right terminology, but they're both wonderful. But I'm still curious about some of these things and why they aren't being requested or funded in some of the other LGEs. Not just the diapers, but like PCAs or assistive devices, just to name a couple of them. So that's kind of a couple more things that I'd be curious to know why there isn't money going towards them, or like I'm just vastly curious at which advocacy organization gets is able to get diapers donated, because that's wonderful. But that's a couple of other things that I'm curious about, why things like that aren't showing up in requests, and how else they're being handled, if they're being handled differently. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a similar question to what Bambi was saying. You're wondering why. I just need to know, like, very specifically, what items from which LGEs.
And I'm saying very specifically, why don't all of them have PCA assistance needed? Why don't all of them have people with assistive devices and or assistive clothing needed? I talk to people across the state and hear people talk about needing those things. So I'm curious about each one of those regions, why it is.
Okay, so this report that, this report that we're looking at that lists the PCA and the assistive devices, these are just a small fraction of the requested items that have been received by Capital Area and Imperial Calcasieu that they have approved, but they just haven't funded the request yet. This isn't a list of every request that has been funded.
I didn't
the
think
LGEs.
What I thought was that it would give me terminology to be able to tell you the things that I'm curious about. But yes, ma'am, I understand what the report is about. I was just curious why other regions didn't need why all the other regions don't need assistive devices and assistive clothing, or why all the other regions don't need PCA services. But yes, ma'am, I understand the report that I'm looking at. Thank you.
Nicole?
Okay, I think maybe to try to help everybody else so we can get it all cleared up, is there a screening process that, let's say I need services, and I go into the office and they have my initial interview screening, whatever you guys do, and maybe they skip over some questions like Ms. Bambi was saying. You know, they skip over something, or they don't ask every single thing that they need to ask. I'm not saying that they're not doing that, but it's kind of reflecting like, it's not getting done because so many areas are, you know, it's up and down. And I know it is a personal care, like, you know, it's in person. If the person asks for it, then yes. But if the person doesn't know that they're supposed to be getting all of this stuff, and maybe they've been in the program for 2 years, they didn't even know that they were supposed to get it, or maybe they forgot about it and now they need it. How do they know that they're supposed to still get that offered to them if it's not offered to them again? Or if they go and they be like, hey, I need this, it would be a simple question to be like, hey, well, we have some other things going on. Let me look at your file. I see that you don't have this, and this. Do you need help with that? And I think that will kind of curve that conversation of, you know, hey, where's the money going? Or why is this region not doing this? Or why is this LED not doing that? That will kind of curve that because those things are being asked. I don't know how often they do it, if they do it monthly, if they do it quarterly, if they only do it annually, but that is probably something that they might want to start implementing so that we would eliminate these discrepancies, because then you would know why, you know, you would know why a person isn't getting something if you would ask the question. They might don't even know that they can even ask for that if they don't know about the service.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that everybody who that receives individual and family support, they do annually a plan of care, a plan of support, and they meet with the family and they find out, you know, the whole goal of the program is for people to live successfully in the community. And so they do meet with the family, they find out where the gaps are, they make recommendations. And I just want, you know, I want you guys to know I'm like, absolutely going to work with you guys to try to answer your questions, but I don't think there's a discrepancy. I think that the LGEs are doing what they're supposed to be doing and they are providing the services. So you just have to show me what, you know, I noticed the difference with the diapers, but with the other services, it doesn't seem like there's really, that the LGEs are lacking in providing services for the people that need it. So, you know, just let me know where you guys see the problems, and I'm happy to try to take that back and see what we need to do. But I feel like they are in most cases. But I hear what you're saying, Nicole, because there's going to be families out there that don't know to ask. You know, they don't know to ask, and unfortunately, the LGEs don't know about them. You know, like they can't go out there to people that they don't know and say, hey, do you need anything? So there's going to have to be like a push, and like somebody's going to have to give them the information to come to the LGE. But once they do, the LGE staff do a whole plan of support with the family and see what all do you need and how can we get you to stay in the community in the most successful way they can.
Right. So it is an annual thing, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
They do
So
the
that's what I'm
plan
saying.
once a year, but they make contact, I think, quarterly.
Okay, so at that quarterly contact, that's what they will probably find out, hey, a need changed or something is not met that isn't, you know, that was once before. So that, okay.
Yep. And they take a look at, like, if you gave somebody a contract for PCA and they're spending it all in the first, then maybe they need more. Or if they did a contract and they're not spending any of it, then they're like, okay, so maybe this isn't something you need. So they take the contract back and give it to somebody else, so that it's a constant throughout the year, making sure everything's taken care of the way it should be.
Right. And I think that is the information that we are asking for, you know, where is it, you know, because we all did read those reports before, and there was discrepancies that me and Ms. There were discrepancies that we both saw, and it wasn't just the diapers. I know it was some other stuff. I would have to go back and look at the reports from the previous years, but yeah, it was more than that. But I get what you're saying. It's an annual thing, and then quarterly they go back and recheck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other questions for Tanya? And I think we have something in the chat, Nicole Green. Yeah, so she was just saying that it's asked during the quarterly. Yeah, and they make sure that they're asking if they're satisfied and meeting the needs. So they have some things in place to try and address the concerns that we're raising. So thank you, Nicole. All right, if there are no more questions for Tanya, we'll move on to our OAAS report, which is through the ARC of Louisiana, and Kelly Monroe will share.
Hello, everybody. Bambi, you putting the, oh, there you go. Thank you. Okay, so we just finished our second quarter where we served 43 people this month. We had one person drop out since in the last quarter and working on getting someone else new onto the contract. But of those 43 people, 15 of those were listed as African Americans. 27 of those are Caucasians, and one person is Hispanic. Those are 28 males and 15 females. Most of the people that are on this contract, let me turn this off, I'm so sorry. Most of the people on this contract are being served in Region 7. That's in the Shreveport area. And the highest percentage at 21% of the people being served in that area. So everybody on here receives support coordination, and then it's broken down into other services like personal care assistance, rental assistance, utility, medical supplies and equipment, and then vehicle and home modifications. That's not the only services, but those generally are the services that people ask for. If someone asks for something different, we will add that to this, but pretty much you can ask for any service to help keep someone independent in their own community. So, so far up into the this quarter, the second quarter, we spent $206,441.68. But that would be a total from last quarter and this quarter of $349,791.31. Now, those were all split up into the different areas. I don't know if you need me to go over those. I'm sorry, Bambi. I think you went too far. Yeah. So I don't know if you need me to go over those, but this is how it was broken down. Where personal care assistance, you can see, is our highest. That's the service most people ask for. That's our most expensive service that we provide or that we pay for. And then rental and utility assistance comes in next. Home modifications usually is a pretty high expense. Usually that's an average of like $7,000 to $10,000, but we really haven't had much of that so far. Most of that has been medical expenses. So if we go to the next page, we can look at the waiting list. So since the last quarter, 14 new people were added to the waiting list. And then in those different regions, there are 10 of those people came from Region 1, 13 from Region 2, 3 from Region 3, 10 from Region 4. There's none in Region 5, 1 in Region 6, 6 in Region 7, 3 in Region 8, 17 in Region 9, and none of them in Region 10. So again, so this time the highest of the people who are like waiting on the waiting list are in the Region 9 area. So the breakdown of race and gender and on the waiting list, 22 of those are African Americans, 25 are Caucasians, 1 identifies as biracial, and we have 18 that are unknown. And I put a little note at the bottom there. We had like 18 incomplete applications that we've asked for more information on. And so in those applications, the race was not identified. So we don't have that information for you today. But of those, 34 of them were male and 32 of them were female. And there's a total of 66 people that was on the waiting list. And again, most of the services that is most desired on the waiting list are PCA services. If we were to fund all 58 of those people on PCA services, it would cost about $1.3 million. The second, where there's 3 people looking for home modifications, 1 person looking for dental, 9 people looking for medical equipment and supplies, which is pretty popular. Rental assistance, 2 people looking for, and then therapy, and there are 2 people looking for therapy. So if we were to fund all of the requests for all 66 people, we would be looking at like about $1.4 million. That's about it. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I saw that there were some chats going. I don't know if they were related to what I was saying. I just saw it come up on the screen. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I'm not seeing.
Hyacinth has her hand raised, and then there are a couple questions in the chat.
Okay.
Dr. McKee?
Hey, good day, y'all. Thanks, Kelly, for your report. Quick question. How
Sure.
long is the waiting process or when someone, requests support and the services and to the time in which they get it?
Yeah, so this is a pretty small contract. So it could be 2-3 years. It really just depends. Unfortunately, very much like the now waiver, if people are waiting usually until someone moves on to a waiver or someone unfortunately passes away.
And then my last question, I noticed that there are 2 regions where we see 0 applicants, and I'm wondering why is that happening? Is there an issue with getting the word out so people know what's being provided? 5 and 10 particularly.
Well, 5, we had people in 5 last quarter, I believe, and those people are now receiving services. Region 10, I'm wondering if there is a mistake. As I was reporting, Region 1 and 10 are so close together. Some people get that confused of which one is which. And I'm wondering if some of those people in Region 1 should be in Region 10.
Yeah, that could happen. I was going to say, because 10 is always right into 1. So that could be, I found it strange that 10, there was 10 in Region 1. So I'm wondering if that's some Jefferson mixed with some Orleans in that number.
I'll definitely go back and check it out and find out if maybe Whitney, got confused of like who was who. You know what I'm saying? Like what area was what, because they're so close together. Does anybody else have any other questions, or did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else?
Kelly, I have a question, but I also know that there's some questions in the chat, so I'll ask staff to read that after I ask my question. You said there was 14 more people added to the list this past quarter, and that's more than normal, right? I don't remember that.
No. Well, it comes and goes because we started really advertising a lot after the last one. You guys asked us to send stuff out. So we had stuff put on Facebook. We reached out to the Traumatic Head and Spinal Cord Injury Fund support coordinators and let them know that, that this contract does still exist. And if there were anybody that was running out of their funds or wanted to apply for these services, to let us know. And so, so it comes and goes in waves. It just depends on, who's putting the word out,
Okay. Thank you. And can we have someone read the questions in the chat?
The questions in the chat were the same that Dr. McKee asked, which was, why are there no applicants in Region 5 and 10?
Okay.
Any other questions for Kelly on this report? And Kelly, is that everything you need to share?
Yep. that's it.
Very good. We're on time. So next we have our Office of Behavioral Health report, and Dana Foster will be sharing. Hi, Dana.
Hi, good afternoon.
Afternoon. So you want to go over the children's report first? We'll pull that
Yes.
up on the screen.
Okay. So just as a reminder, though this is the Q2 report, the data here typically does not reflect spending for the entirety of both Q1 and Q2, since the LGEs are asked to report this data before they are able to receive and process invoices for the full-time period. So generally, as in previous years, some of the LGEs, capital area, for example, use a mix of funding sources by, and by regulation must use federal funding first, which is why they, on the sheet there, they show as 0% expended at this time because they've been using their federal funding, and they will move to using the state funding later on this year. In terms of the flexible family funds, the LGEs are showing as on target in these expenditures, with almost all of the LGEs showing that they have filled their allocated slots. There was one, Northwest Louisiana, that had a few unfilled slots, but they reported to us on their efforts to actively fill those slots. Are there any questions about the child report?
Ms. Kathy Dwyer has her hand raised.
Ms. Kathy?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was an error.
And Ms. Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
Nicole?
Okay, I was listening to what Ms. Foster was saying, and she was saying that the data wasn't, like, when we're asked for them to get the data, they don't have it all the way yet because they haven't actually spent it, correct, Ms. Foster?
Some of the information hasn't been given to the LGEs yet. They haven't had a chance to process those invoices. So it is missing some of the information for the entirety of the quarter.
Okay, so now, okay, so now my question is, when is it that you guys do the quarterly thing to where we'll have a full complete report so that we can really, just look at stuff, just make sure it's all in place?
You're asking when will we have it in its entirety?
Yeah, like the whole full thing once they've spent everything that they have for those 2 quarters, just for the 2 quarters that we're talking about, not for third and fourth. We're talking about just for the first and the second.
Well, I expect that to be soon. We have asked for the information. I think what we're looking for is information from November and December, I believe.
Okay.
So I expect to get that. We expect to get that fairly soon here, and then we can update that and then provide that.
Yeah, but it looks like everybody is on target except for the one at that 29%. But this is because they don't have all the invoices in, correct? So when you guys do get that, do you guys give that to us, or we have to wait until our whole next meeting to get that?
I need to
The
check
next
on that.
meeting.
The whole next meeting.
It's the way our meetings fall.
That's what I was trying to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's really no way, because they have to put, the full amount would be through December 31st. And, as you said, they don't have their invoices.
Right.
This is only 19 days, probably only about 10 or 12 working days in the year. So just the way our meetings fall.
Okay, so it'll be for the next one, and then we can, so it's almost like a back thing, and then we can try to, if we can correct anything, we can try to get it from the back ones that were before to try to stop it from happening in the future, or, just correct the stuff, right? Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Nicole, this is Britton. Just to share. So like in April, you'll have complete data for quarters 1 and 2, and then you'll have partial data for 3. And so by the end of the year, which the end of the state fiscal year is going to be June 30th. So at our July meeting, you're going to have full quarters 1, 2, and 3, but only partial of that final quarter. And then the October meeting is where you actually get the final report for the whole year. So even with on OCD side, with IFS, Flexible Family Fund on that side, it's still going to be a little off just because of how they have to submit their stuff. So that's kind of the lag that you always have. And then October is when you get the final report of everything that's been done the year.
Okay, all right. Thank you for clearing it up, because I was like, we must be like off upon our meetings when they have to get things done, but now I see how it is. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Any more questions on the child report?
I don't see any questions.
Can we go to, I wasn't certain if I was supposed to do the letter or the responses from the LGs. I'm not sure if that's something that I was supposed to go through. I saw that on the agenda, but I wasn't sure if that was.
We can always just share what they sent. If you want to do the adult report, and then we can circle back to the letter, and Bambi and I can share about that.
Okay, let's go to the adult report. Thank you. For the adult report, as you can see, the LGEs are overall all reporting good progress in terms of their expenditures. But just a reminder again that the data does not reflect expenditures from November, December. Capital area reports, as with the child report, that they are using their federal funding right now. They have not begun to use the state funding, and they will again use that at the later on in the year. There were a few that gave us made some progress in terms of any corrective action plans that we had put in place. In terms of Northeast Delta, during Q1, they were at 17%, and now they're at 58%. So they are ahead of where they need to be at this point in the year. Metropolitan was also a LGE that there was a corrective action plan in place. And for Q2, they were using 20% of the child funds, and 53% of the adult funds have been expended. We did reach out to them to request another update of progress on the corrective action plan. And I believe that we haven't gotten that yet, but I'll need to check back. And then Imperial Calcasieu has a lower percentage expended because they ended up increasing their overall funding amount. And those amounts are reflected in the data there. They chose to allocate different funding due to an increased need that they saw. And they, this is a new thing because they if you remember in the previous quarter and in previous years, MCAL was not on the adult tab, but this year they are on the adult tab because they've decided to allocate some funds to serving adults. Are there any questions about the adult report?
Dr. McKee has her hand raised.
Dr. McKee?
Thank you. Ms. Foster, what do you attribute to it being 0 on the waiting list? What do you attribute to that data being there's no one on the waiting list for all of the regions?
I'm not sure if there's one specific answer for that. I mean, I think that the LGEs are getting, some requests and they're responding to individual family needs, but I also think that a lot of folks are being approved for Medicaid. So specialized behavioral health services may be being billed to Medicaid. So some of those things may be accounting for why there are no names on no families or names on the wait list at this time. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know if there's one particular answer to that. It could be a variety of reasons for why there aren't any families on the wait list.
I just was wondering if we were able to capture that, strength of this report and try to look at some of the strategies that OBH is using to help other departments. And I know that there's funding that's tied to, but there has to be some area of strength that can be highlighted from OBH that can possibly be translated in terms how they are possibly advertising the support services, getting the word out to people, but whatever that OBH is using to produce to us a report that's zero on waiting lists, I would be interested and curious to know what those strategies you have that we can translate to help other people move in that same direction. We do recognize that, of course, there's different populations and people have different needs, but I think it's important to, if we are able to capture those strengths, to share that type of information and the strategies that your department is using to make sure that we get these kinds of reports from all departments. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
I'll take this back to my leadership and can discuss further. I will say this is my first foray into doing this work. So I will discuss this with my supervisor and the leadership, and we'll see how we can share that across agencies or with you all in future.
Thank you, Ms. Foster.
You have a comment from Ashley McReynolds. Would you like me to read that?
Yes, ma'am.
It says, I think when people hear Act 378, they tend to think about DD services only. I don't see or hear any advertising of these services.
I appreciate your comment. That's something that I also will take back to leadership, to my supervisors, and we'll discuss further to see how there can be some changes made to advertising or education around these services, or promoting or putting those out further, or in a better way, a more effective way, easily accessible way, so people are aware of the services.
And I would, if Ashley is able to speak, I would like for her to expand on exactly what she's saying. I think I know what she's saying, but
Can you all hear me?
maybe. Okay, hey Ashley, yeah,
Hey.
can you expand on that?
Sure. So when people think of Act 378, the majority of people that I've come across, I've met 3 individuals that have said, oh, I thought that was just for people with an intellectual or developmental disability. And then I say, no, that's not 100% accurate. There are services that are provided through Act 378 funding that are for behavioral or mental health. So people just assume when we talk about Act 378, because of the huge impact it had for DD services, that it's just all consumed with DD. I recently joined the Behavioral Health RAC at Capital Area Human Services. Our meetings are interesting, very short, and there's just not a lot of talk around these specific services, both in the community and in the council meetings, or in other places, because the primary focus is all around individuals with an intellectual or developmental disability. So I think it's just a breakdown in general. I don't think it's done purposely. I think it's just how it is. And, I think with some promotion, some education across everybody, I think you would see people go on the waiting list for it, because people know that it's actually there and it's something that can be provided to them. People just don't know that the services exist.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you for that.
Okay, and if there aren't any more questions, I think we have one more report, our responses. Pull that up, Brenton. Responses to our questions to the LGEs. So at our last meeting, we asked OBH to get some specific questions from the LGEs, which Brenton has highlighted on the screen. They asked us to, the DD Council Act 378 committee to make the request directly to the LGEs. So I sent this letter that is on the screen with the questions that are listed there. How does your agency determine how much will be budgeted for your CCR, Community Care Resources, and FFF, which is Flexible Family Funds programs? The second question, is there a percentage of your total funding that goes towards those two programs? And what happens to any of the program funds allocated that go unspent? So we sent those out to each director of each LGE separately. And if you can't, Brenton, if you can go up, back up, because I want to make sure that people know that we talked about the behavioral health side of it. Where do we say that at?
Well, in the letter, we had mentioned Consumer Care Resources and Flexible Family Fund, and then we did a follow-up email to explain that we were specifically asking about behavioral health as it relates to Flexible Family Fund. I mean, Consumer Care Resources is behavioral health, but we did send that follow-up email to all the LGEs talking about the Flexible Family Fund. We're specifically looking at the OBH side and not the developmental disability side.
Correct. Okay, so our responses. We did not get any response from Region 1, Region 4, or Region 8. And the other responses are below. One of the issues that we had was that I think it goes to what Ashley was saying, was that they really were just so confused that the DD Council was asking about behavioral health services, although these are, I think questions, really good questions. So we had to do some explaining, and Britton and I talked to several directors and staff to explain what the questions were and why the DD Council was interested in that. So we got some responses back. I think some of the responses also still seem to show some confusion. And when the response, maybe they were confused that we were asking about their DD services, but you can kind of read the responses and see. Brenton, did you have anything to add?
No, I was just going to say, we weren't going to go through and read them all. Hopefully you guys took time before this meeting to look at them. And if you have questions to answer, maybe we can answer them. So we had to go at the direction of OBH. We went directly to the LGEs to ask our questions. And so some of the ones like Bambi had mentioned that may have, or that may be leaning towards answering from a DD perspective, I kind of flagged, especially folks that are talking about the 9% of their state general fund, which that's typically something we see in Act 73. And that did not, that's not something you use. That's not a guide necessarily for behavioral health. That's more the DD side. So you'll see some of those are flagged. In general, for the most part, the LGEs that did respond, whenever it comes to answer number one, you can see right here for capital area, they do have a certain amount that they tend to budget for their consumer care resources program there. But most LGEs don't necessarily have a certain amount that they budget for consumer care resources. They base it off of need. They base it off of what their budget was in the previous year, what their waiting list looks like. So they try to have some sort of calculated effort to determine how much they should put towards those resources in the next fiscal year. That being said, I don't think any of them really answered that they have a percentage of total funding that goes towards these two programs. Again, you could see some said 9% of the overall state general fund budget, but I think in this instance, just because capital area is pulled up right here, I think they may have been talking about their flexible their DD side of things. Because whenever you look at their actual dollar amounts that they've put towards consumer care resources and flexible family fund on the OBH side, it's not 9%. So I think that's where some of the confusion was. And most of the LGEs also said if they have money that's left on the table, it's not like they actually have this money that's sitting in their account and they just roll it over to the next year. It's just money that was not tapped into and it stays into the overall state general fund. And they don't have access to that moving forward. Once the new year rolls over, they start with a fresh budget that the legislature has given to them. There was one LGE, maybe it was 5. Yeah, they mentioned that they were able to carry over some funds because they used, I guess, through their LCS or their LINKA funds, they were able to carry over some of that funding. But for the most part, the LGEs mentioned that money is just, it goes back to the state. It's not something that they can roll over to the next year. So I don't know if there were specific questions anyone may have had reviewing this information. To be honest, if you do have specific questions, we'd probably have to go back to that LGE to try to get more clarification, unless that might be something that one of our representatives from OBH, or if the LGE is also present, if they can speak to some of those things. But hopefully y'all were able to review this ahead of time. I do see that there is a chat from Jennifer Purvis. Can you share who you contacted regarding the OBH information you're wanting at Northeast Delta? I will attempt to get your response. We directly contacted the executive director and he sent an email, and I can't remember who he copied on that email, but he did say he would partner with those individuals and then get back to us, and we just never heard back from the executive director. All of our requests were sent to the executive director of all the LGEs so that they could disseminate this information to who they felt would be the most appropriate person to answer the questions. And we did send multiple follow-up reminders to everyone. Like I said, we sent that clarity email just to let them know what we were looking for. In addition to the first email that we sent with this letter, we also sent a reminder email before the due date. We sent this back in November and gave folks until January 7th to answer with a few reminders here and there. So if that clarifies anything. And Ms. Perk said she'd attempt to follow up, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
So I think just a follow-up comment is that it seems there's like a real need, and I think we've talked about it many times, but there's a real need to understand people with comorbid conditions, people that has behavioral health needs, as well as developmental disability needs. And this exercise, with which Britton and I put a lot of effort into really trying to get these responses, like really kind of highlighted how the separation, and it's not intentional. I don't think it's intentional of anyone. It's just that we need to do a better effort of really kind of, instead of working in silos, to really look at this more holistically. And I think that's just kind of a takeaway that I got from this exercise of asking these questions. Do we have any questions or comments on this? Okay. Any other questions for OBH? Okay. I guess we'll move to the next agenda item, which will be announcements. Do we have any announcements?
Just a reminder that we do have the executive committee will meet after this meeting at 3 p.m. And tomorrow from 8:30 on is the full council meeting. And so you can go to our website, laddc.org, to our meetings page if you have not registered for those meetings yet. Once you register, you'll get a link to attend. There are both via Zoom as well. Any of our previous meetings, so we just wrapped up self-determination earlier this morning, and our education and employment committee met last week. Those are on our YouTube page if you missed those meetings and you wanted to go back and check those out and see what was discussed. There will also be a report from each of those committees at our council meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Any other announcements or comments? Okay, so if there are no objections, this meeting will adjourn. And appreciate everyone attending. Thank you, guys.
Bambi, I have a quick question.
Okay.
You work for in Baton Rouge with the governor and all the Senate sessions, but when do you honestly think COVID will be over? Before the summer this year? Because it's a nightmare.
I know. Yeah.
I love y'all. I hope I don't lose the DD Council.
Well, I can't wait till we can see each other again in person.